Right, let's jump into where we are at 7:20 on 25th of May. So a bit of a chance to do a bit of a weekend wrap, have a look at how the week sort of finished up. Obviously pretty quiet on the news coming into the end of the week, and that there's not really a lot of sort of data. I mean, look, we had this kind of home sales, we had the retail sales from Canada, but nothing that directly is impacting so much of sort of what I'm trading. But new home sales here, that's obviously sort of beaten a little bit to the upside, but it's not really a large bit of data that we sort of look off. So I think the big mover was definitely sort of like, those tweets sort of coming out from Trump into the last couple of hours. And this is what's admittedly making it very difficult somewhat to sort of be trading through this period because you're getting these sort of periods where it's just nice, calm, like economic data and the calendar. You can use this because you know when it's coming up, market positions for it. These little tweets are coming out and really just sending the market all over the shop, and they come at any time. And admittedly, this is pretty much the reason I don't trade oil because of its ability to sort of be traveling along fine. Then somebody bombs somebody in the middle of the night. You wake up and your positions are sort of blown out. So look, we'll sort of see how things sort of get how much they sort of flow on into next week. But certainly, it was the thing that came at the time to sort of break quite a few sort of ranges that we've been sort of seeing sort of line up there. So I'll have a quick look at sort of what data we have sort of coming up for the week. So coming Monday, we do, of course, we've got the bank holiday over in the US. Of course, we've got one over in the UK as well. This is an interesting one. We've got Powell speaking before the market even opens, actually. So it's a bit of an odd sort of time to have him sort of coming out there talking. So this could be something that sort of weighs into how the market sort of opens. So obviously something, if he's coming out sort of sounding a little bit more hawkish, then you might see a little bit of a pairing of that US dollar move. But certainly, US dollar DXY is on its knees at the moment, and you're seeing the flows of the capital spread out across everything. And of course, that's what's helping sort of break a couple of these sort of stagnant ranges that we've sort of been seeing sort of form up a little bit. Through so through rest of the session, we have absolutely dead as a doornail. Nothing through Asia, nothing through Europe sessions, and not really even anything through US sessions. So that's a very quiet sort of book there, except for Powell talking. So you could go one of two ways, and I think sort of like obviously partly is going to be dependent on what Powell has to say with it all. But if he comes out sounding a little bit more hawkish and sort of holding their stance of maybe that they're like he said, basically, after the FOMC, that they're in no rush to sort of be sort of cutting rates or anything. You might see a little bit of a pairing of that move of the US dollar, but it's always a little bit tough with these bank holidays, just because you do get either sort of like moves that basically nobody's there to stand in the way of it, so we can just keep on running. Or alternatively, you've got nobody at the desk either way, and we see a quite quiet session. But of course, that's the whole point of going through these charts. Things are at pretty much on the line for breaking points. We have seen quite a few actual little breakouts. It's just got to see. Obviously, it's all about the continuation to sort of see because they're not massive breakout levels, which I'll get to when I get to the charts. Moving forward, Tuesday, still not a great deal on that. We've got 2.3% to the core CPI over in Japan. But apart from that, nothing for Asia. Certainly, start of the weeks have been very, very quiet in the news front. We've got Aussie guy speaking. This Hauser speaks 6 o'clock. He actually, there was, I think last week, it was just this week past actually. He sort of was talking. I think it was 6:30 or something, which actually sent the Aussie dollar down a little bit. So it'd be interesting to sort of see what his commentary is. Generally, you don't pay attention to so much of the sort of speakers with the Aussie. Like they're not market moving kind of sort of things, but certainly not the same as when you see these sort of Fed speakers talking, which they seem to be sort of coming out every second session and that at the moment having something to say. But in terms of data, again, Asia not much, Europe not much. You've got durable goods coming out of the US, it's still quite sort of weak with the numbers and expected to get a little bit sort of weaker with the thing. But, core seems to be moving up a little bit there as well. So I think we're seeing a little bit of a theme of this kind of stuff where we're sort of getting the core numbers moving sort of inverse to what the sort of headline numbers would be there. But again, look, US dollar needs some sort of strong data, needs some sort of confidence back in over there. Before we got consumer confidence, so there we have it. Slight little tick up from that one there through Wednesday. Okay, and then getting into Wednesday morning, then we got CPI. So CPI for Aussie here. Look, with these sort of things, obviously it's tipped to come down a little bit here, 2.3%. If we do get it in at sort of 2.3% on a cooler sort of side, this adds to the move that we're seeing with Aussie, where it's really, look, it's been in a range for the last 5 or 6 weeks or so. It's testing the top side of it. I'll get to it with the charts in a moment, but there was a little bit of an early warning sign of that move coming with inability to complete the channel just before, or the range. Move along, we got RBNZ also on the Wednesday, looking to cut by 25 base point. Press conference through there. Not a great deal of data. Fed minutes on the Thursday. This will give us another little bit of an insight as to sort of obviously the sort of thinking around their sort of last sort of FOMC decision. Might be able to sort of have this a little bit sort of dull, depending on what what Powell has to say come tomorrow morning. We may have a little bit of an insight to this prior to it all. So I think it was quite drastic. They're going to be obviously sort of talking about that for a little bit. I'd pretty much expect almost exactly much of the same sort of once we come out with this sort of their meetings minutes there. Move along, not a great deal sort of through here. Bank holidays across in Europe on the Thursday. GDP still looking pretty weak for the US. Unemployment claims still coming in flat. Nothing really sort of shock or surprise kind of stuff with this data. And that takes us already through to Friday. You've got pending home sales, speakers, retail sales out of Aussie, out of Australia. Again, 0.3%, fairly weak kind of numbers, but looking to hold stagnant. Have a look at how it has been. So it's been trending up a little bit. Obviously didn't quite sort of accelerate as much as they thought it had sort of last print, but we are seeing it's came out May 2nd and now it's coming out on the 30th. It's a bit odd. Yeah, so again, nothing really sort of shocker to sort of take away from the retail sale figures there. And PCE at the end of the week, slight little tick up, and then a couple of bits of data just to sort of finish off the week with consumer sentiment. Again, slightly little tick up over there. So all in all, fairly quiet sort of week. A couple of bits and pieces of data, but nothing sort of super groundbreaking. No sort of sort of top tier, second tier kind of bits of data from the US. CPI is probably going to be the main attraction for the Aussie come Wednesday morning. And pretty much as I said, look, if this comes in a bit cooler, which they've sort of been saying, hey, look, we've beaten inflation or something. One of these news articles put it, slayed the dragon, I think is the term that they used, in terms of the sort of inflation in Australia. We'll see how it goes, but certainly a weaker number there. We should expect to see almost a solidification of the breakout of Aussie, depending on what they're doing with the US dollar at that time. All right, so in saying that, we'll jump onto the chart. Start off with DXY because this thing is really, as you can see, down on its knees here. We did get this little breakout, this was Thursday, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and we sort of came up here, like I was calling the target of 100 to see what they did. And as you can see, this is a support, there's resistance, support, bang, came back in. And the second that they had a chance to sell it there, they jumped on it. And so we've pretty much seen that whole sort of cycle reset again. So now, you're not looking necessarily just up for these levels here. You're looking to see if we can get back above into the high 99s, because this was a level that we've sort of had marked out previously. We can see buyers had been sort of sitting in the zone previously. They tried to hold again recently, broke through. This little up-down candle here would have been around that time that Trump was talking or tweeting. And obviously the markets even used that to then sort of sell into a little bit stronger as well. So really sort of breaking its larger sort of structure that we've sort of been calling. So, coming up towards this sort of, 100 level, this is what I was saying. I wouldn't want to see it much underneath 100. Obviously, we got the breakdown, retest, and now sort of subsequently going lower and lower. So, look, it's a decent sell down, and obviously it sort of ended the week quite bearish, as you can see, certainly coming down here on its lows. But if you put this in and have a look at on the weekly, it's a very ugly sort of candle coming down here, obviously. So, but the thing is, it didn't quite get this breakout. Like if you were looking at this on a weekly and you say, look, that's your zone here that you want to sort of break through. Obviously, what so far has not been enough to sort of get down through there. What I will do is put a little alert just down underneath this. And let's go here. We'll go say weekly zone. Weekly support zones here. So this is what I'm saying, that sort of like coming around and then coming back down like this is incredibly bearish. It's a very ugly sort of candle there for a weekly. It didn't even seem to have a top wick on it. But this is also what could potentially be, and the fact that it failed to break through to this downside as of yet means that it is leading itself where it could be one of those little sort of high hill bottoms. Now, it's a bit tough to sort of get on board of these ones because, you know, this is how they work. They scroll up like this, they'll slam down, which makes that kind of little heel, and that's basically the setup here. Though this is obviously, you know, coming down bearish now, needs to break through this top level up here. Oops. I don't know what's going on with this at the moment. That little arrow through the top side there. So yeah, it's one thing to sort of come down here, and failure to break down means it's not completely out of its zone yet. This could very easily turn into being a little bit of a range down the bottom here. Should buyers find what they need? Should power come out sounding ultra hawkish? Should we see a couple of these other moves reverse coming into, you know, early parts of the week? Downside, as I said, we've got the alert set there. I think if you go down underneath 98.8, I think that's where we're going to be seeing at least a minimum sort of a wick fill down over here at 98 even. But as it is at the moment, failure to break down means that it's still got a possibility that it could see a little bit of a recovery up through here. But this is where it comes in very important that we need to actually see some sort of reason for them to be buying, because they had been absolutely dumping US dollar at all chances at the moment. So I think the zones that you're really looking for is you need to see it back up above 101, which at this moment looks quite a sort of tall order for it to do, particularly sort of coming down so heavily and closing on the lows. But the only thing I could say for it is if it, let's move this down over here, is the fact that it was unable to break through this lower zone here, which is our weekly zone that we got marked out. So I'll wait to see how the week sort of starts out. But as I said, I think sort of underneath 98.8, you're going down, you're going to be testing these 90, 98 even kind of levels where the bottom wicks back over from you know, mid-April. And then you're really in danger of doing a big push, and that could be the one that moves you down to, say, next zone's down in 95 or so. But we'll see how those ones go. For the time being, it's closed onto its support, which is the weekly support, and you know, 4 hour kind of nothing about this looks good. It looks very sort of bearish, admittedly, sort of coming right through these zones here. So coming into early part of the week, I think sort of down under 98.8, I think you'll be looking for your continuation down. Even if this does sort of get back up, as I said, the levels it's got to really overcome the 99.5, which is this sort of a support level here. If we can see the buyers somehow find what they need, let's get rid of that. If we can see the buyers sort of get what they need and get up above there, a reclaim of this level where buyers had been in here previously to be in there, that's your road up pretty much. But you know, as you can see, there's a lot of areas where the market would be very happy to sort of sell into this thing. So it's always hard, like when you're coming down so bearish. I mean, we're off sort of like multiple failed rally attempts to sort of see this thing actually move up. If we look from the whole bounce effort here, where we are, so dang, so yeah, you're somewhat in between the 61 and the oops, let's put these on here, settings. Somewhere between the 61% and the 78% at the moment. So I think, look, if this thing's going to recover, there's a lot of work for it to be done. Ultimately, till you get back above 100, at best, you're just looking for a bit of a range down this bottom side here. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Let's turn this one into a zone. Yeah, so you need to see some sort of recovery up from here. yeah, just trying to think of something positive to sort of say about it, but at the moment, it's very much looking like it wants to go down here. The only thing I could cautious about with these things is the fact that obviously you're coming into the long weekend. You got obviously with that you got bank holiday come the Monday session, and we've got sort of like more sort of trade dramas on the horizon. As we know, the sort of like any sort of trade dramas at the moment aren't positive for US dollar. So yeah, so worked for it to be done, but I think sort of 98.8. If it's under there, then yeah, we can see another drop down quite quickly down to 98 flat. Moving along, gold up into that resistance zone. So this is the area I was sort of kind of calling. I thought we may have actually sort of failed a little bit earlier coming back down through here. So we had like 3 attempts coming to get under this 32.80 after this sort of nice sort of pullback that we saw. But obviously it's pretty much just a straight dribble up through this whole session. So the plan was once we were above sort of 32.70, which is this zone just here, to look up to 33.60/70, which is basically where we are now. So we've got a bit of a confluence going on here because this is the resistance that we sort of saw, and it's obviously played its hand as being a support, then final resistance again. Excuse me. Around these mid 60s, 33.60 zone. We've also got the falling resistance, and we've also got the 78% retracement of this last drop down move through here. So I think it's gold's at quite a sort of pivotal point. And the thing that I'm finding interesting about this is that, as I say, US dollar didn't fully break down. Like it has broken down. It's ended its week on its lows, just as gold will be ending its weeks on its highs up here. But they're both coming into a pivotal point, but unable to have fully broken through. Not the major points. So obviously 34.30s, that's your major high over here. So that would be your swing high to sort of confirm basically going back up towards sort of 3,500, give you a break out of this falling resistance. But at the same time, it was unable to break through. Even though it sort of came into it, rejected, and then sold right back up into it, it's closed right on its resistance. DXY closed right on its support. So I think if you see one of those break, you'll see both of them break. So it means basically if we break through that 98.8 on DXY, most likely we'll see gold pop up over to 33.80s and then be looking to sort of move up to sort of tackle these highs back up over here at 34.30. The zone just there. So again, there's work to be done with it all, but till it sort of proves itself and gets it back above this zone, above sort of like, so call it 33.80 to give it a little bit of room to breathe as well, there's still the chance that this rejects and pushes back down. And if we see US dollar sort of push back off its supports, most likely we'll see gold push back off the resistance levels here. So certainly, look, it's played out. It came back up here. Not admittedly as clean and fast as this move did come when we did get this rally, and obviously that was very quickly undone. But at one point you're looking at this, and this buying here was very solid, straight up. And then obviously when it did turn, it turned on a dime, came down, stuffed around, and then bang, bang, we can see the end result there. So, yeah, I think with gold, the sort of level 30, as I said, let's just put alert here. I'll say messages, cool. 33.75, I think means that we're probably going to be looking to sort of move it a little bit higher. What's this? I think maybe got too many alerts. No, okay, maybe something's going on with the alerts now then. Anyway, so that's pretty much the top side move for it there. Should you sort of come back down, I would say, look, still basically back under this 32.80, which is what we were looking for on Thursday, was that? Yeah, just Thursday, sort of coming through here. That's still the move. That's the path you need to take out should you want to see be moving to the downside there. It's funny, I've been calling this sort of 33.60, 33.70, hence the arrow. If I get a shot, I'm going to try and short it. So I'll give it a shot around this area because although it is closing on its highs, we're coming into a fairly decent confluence. I think we've got a good chance to at least sort of push back down here early, and then a second, third effort kind of coming up here gives you enough time to at least sort of jump out if you've timed this one wrong, and we see this thing start to move up a little bit higher here. I don't think we're going to necessarily break out from the get-go, But we'll have to sort of wait. I think a little bit of it's going to sort of be predicated on what Powell has to say tomorrow morning as well. So top side's here above 33.75, bottom side below 32.80, and I think that'll give us the next sort of direction. Move along, we've got silver. Silver's not performing as well as gold. It did sort of very much sort of like after that rally attempt, it tried to break up into this top area. Sellers came in as we expected and kind of sort of really smacked it quite hard actually. This is a, what do we say here? 3% knock on the head. That's a fairly big, that's a buck move to the downside from that sort of resistance area. But we saw it sort of find support on the top side of this falling resistance almost to the cent, and it's back up into that zone there again. All these things, it's exactly the same. If you look at that on a weekly, that's looking like it wants to go a lot higher, but it has closed into a zone that we have marked out. And this is my point that they're very much closed onto the zone. They look bullish. They're closing on their highs or their respective lows, but still, as is, unable to quite break through. So the confidence is, I mean, it looks like it wants to go higher for sure, but the confirmation isn't quite there yet. So I think sort of you can sort of respect and maybe sort of consolidate this top area through here. It's a bit tough, as I said, like when you've got these bank holidays, plus you've got UK and also US on the Monday, that we may see a lack of volume and we may see things just sort of grind a little bit tomorrow. So we'll have to sort of see how this one plays out. But if we have a look back onto this 4 hour, as it is right now, it's into a resistance area. It's got to prove itself basically above these highs, 33.70. Above 33.70, then pretty much this idea that it will move up into a range between 33.70 and 34.50, looking to make this sort of 33.70 its support area. But it needs to sort of prove itself and close up into this zone to show a sort of a depletion of sellers that are happy to sell it here, because obviously they came in quite strong from this level here on Thursday. So there's obviously some firepower around here, but indication of that sort of not being there or not looking to sort of sell from that level will be a move above sort of 33.75, 33.80 up into this area and a close up around there as well. Aussie, another one that we saw sort of break towards the end of the week, but again, it's closed up into its resistance. It hasn't quite broken through. It looks bullish. We had this little sort of range that we were forming along sideways here, and this was the tell here, where you could see that when they were obviously trying to drive it back down, unable to sort of get the completion. In the same sort of way that channels will work, ranges will work as well. When you've touched the bottom, you touch the top, touch the bottom, touch the top, back and forth, back and forth. When you see one of these moves sort of fail to complete, that's generally your early warning sign that you're going to see the structure break. So the same with the channels, unable to sort of come down. Generally, you'll see a double bottom or so instead of a continuation, and then it moves out and pushes up to the top side. So again, same with gold, same with silver, DXY. They all sort of broke through a couple of headlines coming into the end of the week. They weren't economic bits of data, so they're not sort of what I call sort of landscape shifting bits of data. It's not like we've had the rate decision and okay, we know they're cutting rates. We've got CPI and it came in, 0.75% higher. They're not sort of bits of data in which, okay, wow, it was a bit of Trump sort of tweeting. They've got the weekend to sort of think about it, to sort of see how people are going to react to it all. It doesn't mean it can't have sort of lasting implications by any means, but they're not like these moves didn't happen from actual hard decisions and hard data. It came from basically tweets and threats. So the legitimacy of their moves is somewhat questioned. And the fact that none of them sort of actually got their full breakouts, all they've done is gone up and tested, albeit closed right on resistance supports, these kind of things. As of now, they haven't quite got there. It doesn't mean that the moves are destined to fail by any means. It just means that the confirmation isn't completely there. I think a move up and a close above 65, I think that'll be the time you may see Aussie move up. So Aussie, I've sort of been very much of the idea that this would be moving back down. I mean, we've been consolidating within, 150 points or so for, the better part of, where's that, 16th, a month and a half. So 6 weeks or so, just really bouncing around here. It's been multiple attempts to get back up over these highs. As you can see now, this last attempt here has actually broken through as well. So it does give all the ideas that sort of like you may be sort of blowing up to the top side. We put this as a little triangle through here. Just the fact that it hasn't fully broken, this is your swing high, and also that it moved off a headline opposed to data makes me question the legitimacy of the follow through of this move. With this, you could see a little bit of a pullback. You could see, DXY make a little top wick before it comes down and then breaks through the lows. Or you could also see this, put a little bottom wick in here and then move up to the top side here. But I think certainly above 65 is where we're going to see pretty much a confirmation that it's going a bit higher. And now, if it does go higher, we are sort of running into next level of resistance pretty quickly at 65.50. And above that, almost back up to 67. But given the fact that this took so much effort coming down through this way over here, I imagine that it's going to be a pretty tough play for it to get back up to the top side here. But certainly a move above 55, you've got at least a 50-point move up to 65.50, where we'll sort of see the last bits of support. Sorry, next level of resistance there. But a move back down towards 64 60s. See if we can sort of hold this area as a retest. Something like this. And then a second test, if we hold this level at 64 60s and start to move back up towards 65, I think that's the time it'll break through. But I'd be surprised if it just opens up at just above those levels there. Move along, we've got copper, another one. We saw the big breakout coming into the end of the week there. So I put a tweet up on X the other day, and I said sort of like, silver, copper, Aussie, and the one, all in ranges. And if they all break, this is why I trade these sort of charts all together, because they all move together. As you can see, they've all broken out at the same time, and certainly coming into the end of this one here. But, if this has moved on trade talks, that's not a big sort of risk on kind of thing. It's no sort of like, oh, bang, okay, let's ramp everything up, and which is a bit of perplexing to me. I was actually away from the screens on Friday night, so I'll have to have a bit more of a look into it in case there's actually some other drivers that I've sort of missed here. But I was surprised to see Aussie move on that, other than the fact of weak US dollar. But this is what I've been saying with Aussie though. Like it's kind of detached itself from the risk asset kind of position a little bit more recently, because we've seen equity markets move to the top side and Aussie hasn't really responded. We saw equity markets cop a little bit of a slap coming into the close of last week. Aussie broke up to the top side. It's more moving off, basically, as I said, just a weak US dollar. I mean, obviously copper here, it's quite sensitive to copper as well. And we've got this big breakout in copper. This is actually quite a decent move here, if you look at this with copper. But Aussie has just really kind of detached itself from its typical kind of risk associated sort of confluences, basically. So if you look at this move coming up through here from its little shakedown there, I mean, that's a 5% move. That's a big jump. And this is obviously in the space for a couple of hours. Disregard that last candle here, but these two 4-hour candles, that's sort of moving 5% or so. That's a big jump to sort of come into the end of the week. So again, these sort of things, you're just going to see that follow through on Monday. And then top side, you're almost sort of coming back up into these resistance levels around this sort of 4.997 level. Yeah, so I imagine it's a little bit of stuffing around up in this top side here, but certainly I think any sort of pullback through here, maybe back down to this sort of 478, could be looking to be bought up. If we see a bit of a move down here, would possibly happen in the same time as you see a little bit of a retest on Aussie, a little bit of a top wick on DXY. But if buyers step in at these previous resistance support levels and start to drive it back up, I think that'll be your sort of warning sign that these moves are going to actually take out the highs that we saw on Friday night, and we'll see some sort of continuation there. And finally, move along, we just got the one. And this is what I was talking about, that we sort of had this effort sort of through its little range, grinding along and into the end of the week, bang, moving down even more. Again, these sort of moves all seem to smack of weak US dollar opposed to strength in yuan. That move was more obviously sort of, Trump sort of going on about the EU. And so with their kind of sort of trade negotiations and that, it shouldn't really impact the yuan so much itself, but indirectly through the fact that this is a US dollar cross. And if people are dumping US dollar across the board, well, obviously uh, it's not going to be able to avoid those flows. And so we've seen US dollar be sold off against the Aussie there. We've been seeing it sold off against the yuan just here as well, and obviously breaking down to its new lows here. So look, again, you just want to see these things. If of all these charts that I've just looked at, I would say that this is probably the most convincing of it actually breaking and coming through its own zone. Everything else, as I said, as I showed, sort of has kind of closed on its supports. Link these lows together. Not a big fan of that. It's just worth noting. You got a couple of little lows coming in there together. Back up above 719. Okay, back up into this area. But as you can see, there's endless levels of resistance that it needs to prove itself above the side over here. So I'll be watching for any sort of movements with the with China in regards to their trade sort of situation with the US at the moment. But Trump certainly seems to be getting a little bit sort of anxious about the sort of speed in which this is all sort of unfolding. And I think that's what's causing a couple of these sort of outbursts with the tweets, which, as I say, it makes it more increasingly difficult to trade these things when these sort of tweets can come at any time. So as I said, Friday night there was, pretty much calendar was bare. I was like, that's fine. Had a dinner on. I was like, yep, cool, go to the dinner. And then, of course, you sort of you come back and all these moves have exploded out. So we'll see how we go. Power talking, I think, sort of tomorrow morning will be something will give a little bit of maybe direction and a little bit of pairing of those moves that we saw sort of into the close on Friday. The bank holidays are going to be playing into things again. And apart from that, it's got a pretty quiet sort of week on the news front. So wouldn't be expecting a great deal Monday, Tuesday, but certainly eyes on CPI sort of come Wednesday. Finally, just have a quick look at gold-silver ratio as well, because this is another one that's been quite dormant. Did see this, I put this little falling resistance in here the other day, just because pretty much after we sort of got this massive breakout and then these sharp pullbacks, tried to call it here, nah, kept going. Tried to call it here, nah, kept going. Moved up here, little wedge, bang, came down. It's been an incredibly rough chart to be trading. But as you can see, it did really come in and hit its little sort of more medium-term resistance and pretty much to the cent and reject it back down there. So we saw obviously gold take off a little bit with this. It's gold-silver ratio, top side moving to the top side there. But I think what it has given us is the fact that we've got 3 touches of this line now. Gives us a little bit of significance. So I think above 101.80, breaking that sort of falling resistance, and also the Friday highs with that wick high there. I think a move above through this level of 10, call it 102 just for a round number, could see this sort of push on a little bit further, but goes pretty much in line with the fact that silver has been sort of obviously moving up a little bit with gold, but not quite able to get its proper sort of breakout at the moment. But certainly, yeah, a lot of very sort of choppy charts and that out there at the moment. All right, that's it from me.